Hi, it's Melissa Joy from Pearl Planning. Happy International Women's Day. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Melissa Fradenburg and Hannah Near, and we are going to share a little bit of our best ideas, some of the 10 best ways you can improve your investing choices and your relationship with money. International Women's Day is celebrated every year on March 8th. This year's theme is embracing equity. And I know that when we focus on gender issues, certainly equity and access to equitable, whether it's information or financial opportunities for success, is always an ongoing theme. And when you think about it, focusing on money and investing can really help that equity factor. In fact, in many cases, when you measure men versus women, then you see there's a disparity between either earning potential on average, wealth on average, etc. So we think that a conversation about investing will help to narrow that gap and embrace more equitable outcomes for people, especially women. And we're thrilled to talk about how we think that you can help yourself. So this is a short video, but we're going to cover a lot of topics. And we hope that if you find an area where you think you may need to focus more, you want to do some research, great. Make a note of it. Say, I want to focus on improving my investment allocation, or maybe I need to explore my risk tolerance. We're going to cover 10 areas that may be a fit for you to explore more. And like I said, make a note, and we'll have additional resources, whether they're on our website, or in the World Wide Web, etc. We think this will just kind of be a tip of the iceberg where you can find some areas that it may make sense to focus on.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, the first consideration I'm going to talk about today is financial goals. And this, I think, is a fun one. So really thinking about what you want to be, have, and do in 5, 10, 20 years from now. While it seems easy, a lot of times women, we tend to worry about others, right? What are our spouse's needs, our kids' needs, our parents' needs as they're aging? So I really want you to first focus on, what does your life look like? What are you saving for? And of course, if you are in a relationship, you do want to talk to your partner about what their goals are as well and make sure you're on the same page. But when you're considering your goals, do think about how they may change in retirement. Do you plan to downsize? Do you plan to relocate? Maybe you plan to get a second home. If you're here in Michigan, it may be in a warmer climate. That's a very popular sentiment this time of year here in Michigan. So just thinking about those things and thinking about how much you would need to save up for those goals. It's really important to share your goals with your financial team. If you're working with a financial advisor, a CPA, and you haven't discussed what it is you're saving for or what your goals are, then that's certainly something I would want to go back and discuss with them. It's also important to be open to adjusting goals as life happens. So things like getting married, getting divorced, having children, sending kids off to college, possibly the loss of a spouse. These are all changes in life that may change those goals. It's important to be flexible and revisit from time to time, typically annually, what those goals are and your progress towards them. The next consideration is risk tolerance, which simply is, what is your comfort level with market volatility? Over time, historically, the market has gone up. However, over the short term, there are fluctuations up and down. And really, what is your tolerance for that, or how much of that up and down volatility can you stomach? And typically, the more risk you take, the more reward over time. So it's really important to think about what your goals are, and then think about how much risk you're comfortable taking in order to get there. And typically, women tend to be a little bit more conservative, and that's okay, as long as they're not too conservative to not reach those goals. It's also very important to keep a long-term market perspective, which is really hard for all investors. But knowing that if your goal is 10, 15, 20 years out, that market fluctuations over a week, month, quarter, even a year or two do not determine that long-term outcome for your investments. And of course, there are opportunities even in a down market. So if you are willing to take on the risk and put money to work when the market is down, that is something that can actually work in your favor as you're trying to build wealth. One of the ways we as financial advisors try to help reduce risk is by diversifying your portfolio. And this is a really important consideration when it comes to investing. So if you've heard the terms, don't put all your eggs in one basket, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Not just talking about putting money into one individual stock versus many, but different areas of the market. If you look at this slide here, this shows going back to 2008 through the end of last year, different areas of the market or sectors that you could invest in and their performance year after year. One thing I do want to point out here is you see that the pattern is somewhat random, and what often does really well for a year or two, the very next year may be at the bottom. So what this means is you don't want to chase returns and try and buy the best performing asset class in any given year. That is a losing game, and it's also a guessing game because no one really knows. So what we like to do is own all the different asset classes in what's called a diversified portfolio. So owning a bunch of different areas of the market and also rebalancing those portfolios so that you stay in that particular allocation is really important to, again, help reduce the volatility in the market and can be a very good thing to do when you're building your wealth. Another thing to consider when it comes to investing is socially responsible investing. And simply what this means is when selecting funds or individual stocks in which to invest, that you're considering things like environmental, social, and governance factors and aligning your values in those areas along with your investment. So the difference between traditional investment strategies and what we call ESG, which stands for environmental, social, governance, is really just an additional screen. So we do still look at relative market performance, but if there's a particular area, for example, environmental, a company's carbon emissions, air and water pollution, deforestation, those are things that are important to people, really with climate change. Another area is social, so employee gender diversity, right? And how companies treat their employees. It can be, women on the board of the company, if that's important to you. There are different values, and I just want you to be aware that those values can be aligned with your investing in what we call socially responsible investing, and it is an option for investors with both pro planning and across the board. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Hannah to go through some more considerations.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So I'm going to touch on the importance of giving some consideration to your time horizon when it comes to your goals. So as Melissa Fradenburg mentioned, when we think about goals, whether they're strictly financial or personal, we like to break them into shorter term goals within the next few years and then longer term goals. So longer term goals can typically withstand a little bit more market turbulence as they have more time to recover from fluctuations. So usually we'll adjust the investment strategy to be slightly more growth focused when it comes to those longer term goals, whereas with near term goals, we may look at a more stable solution such as a bond or a CD or money market. So when it comes to thinking about really big goals, like retirement spending goals, it's really easy to think of the goal ending at retirement age. However, we like to encourage clients to think of retirement goals as lasting throughout their entire life. So even though that saving strategy portion might end when you retire, we would still continue to plan on the tax and investment front throughout your entire retirement. So if we were looking at a goal like spending in retirement, when it comes to pinpointing a specific number, we have some strategies that we like to help clients kind of use to think through what this goal might look like once they actually do hit those retirement years. So one idea that can kind of help us when we are thinking about these longer term goals, specifically retirement spending, is what we call the retirement spending smile. So this idea basically considers that most of us spend a little bit more money in our early retirement years when it comes to things like travel, new experiences, things like that. Those are usually our healthiest years in retirement. And then once we get to kind of those middle years of retirement, often those types of travel expenses can decrease. We might be slowing down a little bit. And then once we hit those later retirement years, expenses can increase again due to kind of healthcare related costs or in-home care expenses. So that's why we call it the retirement smile. It's higher at the beginning of retirement and then higher at the end, but there's kind of those years in the middle where it will likely dip. So that's a pretty specific example, but this is just kind of an example of the strategy game planning that our team of financial planners can kind of help our clients think through. And then lastly, we encourage you to build out your goals with room for adjustments over time. Life has a way of surprising us sometimes, so it's important to build in some wiggle room into your strategy just to help us kind of course correct and adjust the strategy as life unfolds. So next up, we wanted to talk about the importance of tax implications on your overall financial planning strategy. So there are a decent amount of overlap between your tax planning strategy and your investment strategy. And we like to help our clients think through some of the factors that are more controllable when it comes to the tax planning front. So here's just a couple of tips to kind of help you understand the different types of investment accounts when it comes to the way they work from a tax perspective. So if we're thinking about a traditional IRA or a work retirement plan such as a 401k, typically you're going to receive a tax benefit in the year that you make your contribution. The funds are going to grow tax deferred over the life of that investment, and then when you pull the funds out in retirement, you pay taxes on the withdrawal. If you were to invest in a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, on the other hand, it kind of works the exact opposite. So there's not that tax benefit in the year that you make the contribution. However, when you pull the funds out in retirement for spending, you don't owe any taxes on that withdrawal. So that's just kind of one of the examples of factors that we're working with folks to kind of weigh the pros and cons of each option and help them make decisions about what makes the most sense for their particular financial plan. It's also really important to consider making some strategic moves in years when you have a higher or lower than average income. So we like to work with our client CPA to kind of help game plan ways to make the most of a low income year, such as like a Roth conversion, or in a lower income year, potentially capturing some capital gains to help reduce the tax burden in a higher income year. So these are just some considerations that we would recommend thinking about when it comes to kind of this tax strategy within your investments. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, but if it did raise any questions, if you do have questions about the tax efficiency of your portfolio, we would encourage you to talk to your financial planner. If there's questions that we can answer for you, we're happy to also answer those anytime. So then lastly, I wanted to touch on understanding your investment account's fee structure. So depending on the firm that you work with or the account type that you have, there's several ways that you might be being charged fees in your investment account. So many financial planners have moved towards more of a fee-based model where they're charging a percentage of fee of your overall assets under management on a quarterly or annual basis. This is the type of quarterly model that we use primarily at Pro Planning for our assets under management clients. However, you might work with a firm who charges commissions based on each trade they complete. So we encourage you to just never be afraid to ask questions when it comes to gaining a better understanding of how you're being charged fees. We think transparency when it comes to fees and expenses is really important part of your relationship with your financial planner. And we do want you to remember that some investments such as mutual funds or ETFs might also have or will also have additional underlying expenses that might be harder to determine as a client. So we like to work to keep these expenses as low as possible, but again, the biggest takeaway here is just to not be afraid to ask questions when it comes to gaining clarity on how you're actually being charged for the financial advice you're receiving. So with that, I will turn it back over to Melissa to discuss our last 3 considerations for women investors.
So estate planning isn't investing per se, it is related to investing in so many ways though. So I think it's critical that we talk about this as early and often. You may be thinking of estate planning and saying, what is that? Well, that's kind of the legal documents that accompany you throughout your life, including your financial life. So sometimes instead of people saying I need to do estate planning, they say, oh, I don't have a will. I need to do that. Also, in conjunction with that, are your beneficiary designations on your investment accounts. Perhaps you have people in your life who depend upon you, whether it's your children, your spouse or partner, or family members, and you want to make sure that your documents are updated so if something were to happen to you, the people that are important to you that you want to be taken care of are taken care of. Additionally, there are documents that may accompany you while you're living but unable to help or kind of act for yourself. Those include powers of attorney and medical powers of attorney. We always suggest that you consult with an attorney. We're not providing legal advice here. We're just reminding you of some important areas that work in conjunction with financial planning and investing. So I think it's really important for you to consider these things and look at them. You can meet with an estate planning attorney. You may have legal benefits within your employer plan, in which case they should be utilized if you need to update or amend or create an estate plan. And if you're not going to be reaching out to an attorney, then we have suggestions for ways that you can get documents in place that may not be as good as one-on-one individual advice from an attorney, but there are some digital solutions as well. We also encourage you, if you think you may have needs for life insurance or disability insurance to replace income, these are also things that are important to consider. It may make sense to have them within your group plan, or you may need a separate plan. And of course, that would require some customization, personalization, and research in terms of what is the best fit for you and your needs. In some cases, people have life insurance and they don't have the need for it anymore. And then you may want to evaluate whether you should replace that cost for the premiums with saving or spending somewhere else. So I like to say that Hannah and Melissa and the whole team here at Pro Planning are my dream team. When you're thinking about who you need on board to help you with your finances, financial decisions, or in many cases, your money accountability, I encourage you to build out your dream team as well. In some cases, that's just a friend who's kind of a financial accountability partner. And it may be, and if you're in a relationship, your spouse or partner who, instead of kind of being separate silos when it comes to money decisions or one of you having all the information, you need to share the information and consider yourselves a team instead of individuals. But also, oftentimes people decide that they need to work with professionals, and some of those examples include financial planners, CPAs or accountants, estate planning attorneys, and then, when you're going through stages in your life, if you're negotiating into a business, you may need a business attorney, a divorce planner if you're going through a divorce, Social Security expert or Medicare expert when you're making decisions like that. So you may need to be surrounded by people who deal with these types of decisions all day, every day, versus you come across them every once in a while. Not everybody needs every person on such a team. And it really depends on a couple things, your needs as well as your perspectives. Some people are great candidates to research and do things themselves and just kind of one-off some situational assistance along the way. while other people, it would be a great fit to get extra help, whether they prefer to delegate or they need some extra assistance in areas that they don't have as much experience or confidence in. And there's no right way or path. Just because your family members or somebody else may have preferences otherwise, doesn't mean that has to be the case for you. So we really encourage you to evaluate and consider whether you need to add or subtract from your team. Make sure you have the right people on board to help you stay on track. You know, the world of money and investments is always changing. And I think that being curious, continuous learning, considering how you may be changing in context of the world around you, all of these are critical factors in terms of investing success. Investors really get rewarded for resilience and a growth mindset, a mindset that understands that typically you're investing over time, not for a moment in time. And so asking questions, having a team that you're comfortable with asking questions, that you don't feel belittled when you go and approach different things, all of those are helpful in building your confidence and comfort. And really what we encourage you to be a better investor, you need to be a better decision maker. And if you're open to learning, curious, understand the people that you can trust, not distracted by shiny objects, this can all help to assist with your financial success over time. The time has flown by and we're wrapping up on this video. Of course, we always have to include disclosures, but I just want to thank everyone who listened in. Hopefully you picked up a nugget of something that you think will be valuable and helpful as you're on your investing journey. Shameful plug, but if you're willing to follow us, here's my Twitter account, our Facebook page, Pearl Planning Wealth, and Melissa Fradenburg also has a Facebook page for Pearl Planning Grosse Pointe, as well as we're on Instagram under Pearl Planning Financial. Feel free to visit any of these places where we'll keep information available, including videos like this. And finally, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have follow-up questions or considerations. We're always here to help. We have 4 Michigan locations, including our home office in Dexter, where I am, Grosse Pointe, Michigan, where Melissa Fradenburg works along with Jay Fradenburg, Charlevoix, where Hannah is located, and Birmingham, Michigan, for our divorce financial planning clients. You can feel free to reach out to me at melissa@pearlplan.com or call any of our offices, and we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening in, and have a great International Women's Day.